Brightburn, the tale of an alien spaceship that crashes on a farm in Kansas where a farmer and his wife who had been wanting a baby find this alien child that looks human and raise it as their own as he begins to develop superpowers. Sound familiar? Well, this one's evil. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler-free review for Brightburn. So, evil Superman movie. Was it good? Is it bad? Is it worth checking out this weekend? It might be worth your time to check it out this weekend. I mean, having just come back from it, I gotta say, I was entertained. In other words, it held my attention, and I was focused, and it had me in suspense at a lot of points, so I was drawn in, mostly into the actual character study and story elements of the movie. And so because it did entertain me and it did hold my attention, I'm gonna give the movie a B-. But I'm not going any higher than a B- because I don't feel like the rewatchability factor is there. So a lot of the scenes that were just super intense in this movie, there was a lot of that stuff in the trailers. So here I am watching this movie kind of constructing those scenes in my head that I saw in the trailers. In some ways that took me out of the suspense. It didn't make the scenes any less good. A lot of the suspenseful scenes where you're seeing this kid, Brandon Breyer, really using his powers, and it's suspenseful, and one moment he's there, next moment he's there. Things like that were pretty cool. So I thought these suspenseful scenes were well done and well constructed, but because I had seen a lot of it in the trailers and I was already putting it together in my head because of that, I feel like if I saw this movie a second time with full knowledge of everything that's going on, it's gonna be way, way less suspenseful. The only thing that I feel like that would have good rewatchability for me is the actual character study of the character Brandon. Because for all intents and purposes, he is our Clark Kent, except rather than being inherently good and a beacon of hope and saving the world and learning to overcome the temptations to use his power for evil and putting limits on himself to use his powers for good, we're watching this kid say, well, why not? What's anybody got to do to me? Seriously. And off he goes. And it's an interesting character study to look at what Superman could have been if he was evil, which kind of gives you a good respect for the Superman who is good and chose to be good. At least that's what I was thinking, because if you can't tell, I'm a huge Superman fan. I love the character of Superman. And this show made me think an awful lot of Smallville. And I'm thinking about Clark Kent facing a lot of the same stuff that this kid was facing, but learning to be good. I mean, I'm thinking of crazy episodes where he just discovered his X-ray vision and he realizes he could see anything. And his mom says, well, if I could see anything, I'd learn not to look. And then Clark taking that to heart and putting those limits on himself because he's choosing good over evil. And so it's interesting as you go through Smallville and as powers are manifesting in his life, how he learns to try to control those so that he can use them for good rather than for evil. It's interesting. And so it's interesting in this one to go the exact opposite way, that as powers are manifesting, it's like, oh, I could do that. Cool. I'll just go take out this person that's bugging me. I'll take out that person that's bugging me. Oh, you're gonna tattle on me now? It's like, oh my gosh. So it's kind of interesting to see the reverse Smallville. It was also interesting in this movie, Brandon's relationship with his ship, because there was elements of it that reminded me of that Superman movie where he's awakened in the middle of the night, called to the ship, and then, he builds his Fortress of Solitude. Obviously, this is nothing like that, but it's interesting as the ship calls to him in this movie and kind of his relationship with the ship. And it reminded me of Smallville, where Clark had that same thing and even had a misunderstanding.
I'm sure I'm reading it wrong.
Why? What does it say?
They are a flawed race, rule them with strength, my son. That is where your greatness lies.
But it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't conquer the planet and rule them. It was be a protector. But because the ship is totally alien, and it's totally alien trying to communicate to somebody that's been raised by humans and then trying to understand that. So it kind of gave me more of a respect for the show Smallville and what that show explored while Clark is choosing good, while you're watching this kid Brandon go through the same stuff and choose evil. See, Superman nerd, totally geeking out over that. That's what I was thinking. And so I don't know if that's good or bad, that half the time I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, how cool would it be to get an actual Superman movie that is just solely, never him actually becoming Superman, but watching him as a teenager learning to choose good, going through a teenage rebellion, facing these temptations, but overcoming them. And what's that even like for his parents? It was cool to see Roy from The Office in this, as well as Elizabeth Banks. I thought they did a good job as the parents who did really love their kid, but kind of dealing with the issues of what? He's so powerful and he's choosing such evil. So you have the father who's just like, okay, we are in over our heads. We gotta just take care of this. And there's the mother like loving her son. This is the kid that we prayed for. I'm not turning on him. So it was interesting to have that dynamic between parents and kid. Now, Brandon Breyer himself was an interesting character, but there's a lot of scenes where he's talking with his mom and dad and like he's kind of emotionless. And I think what they're trying to do is show you how alien he is. And so, you know, when they're talking about these grisly murders that have happened and he's showing no emotion for it, I think it's supposed to make us feel creepy. I did not feel that when I was watching it thinking, oh, that kid is creepy. I didn't feel that. The parts where that kid freaked me out the most is when you couldn't see him. Like in those suspenseful scenes where they're building the suspense and he's using his abilities and you're seeing it from the victim's perspective. That for me was the parts where it was the most intense and that kid was the most scary, but not those scenes where he was kind of emotionless. So like that part didn't get me so much, but the suspenseful scenes I thought was kind of interesting when you're looking at his powers through the other people's perspectives. So B- because it is an interesting character study. It is an interesting look at things. But it's not something that I feel I'm in a huge hurry to go see, and also the fact that I kept thinking how I want to see a Smallville movie. Like, it's like that can't be a good sign if I'm watching this and spending half the time thinking, I want to see Smallville the movie! Give me the real Superman! I want to see that! So that's kind of where my head was. But where was your head? What did you think of Brightburn? Do you think it's a good movie? Interesting character study? Did you hate it? What did you think? Let's talk in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, like Aladdin, gonna be dropping this weekend, or my next ranking video, trailer reaction, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.